Morning, guys. I had some phenomenally weird dreams in the past few nights. For the first time ever in my dream, I actually got aware enough during the dream to ask one of the other guys what it feels like to be a character in somebody else's dream. They didn't take it well. The response was near immediate hostility to be told that you're a character in somebody else's dream. So, more proof that dreams do not like to be reminded of being dreams. There are some metaphysical implications for this discovery, but I will let you ponder them on your own instead of bothering you with my religious studies grade, which is pretty high. Let me show you. I got this paper from school, and here are my final grades. 10 being best, 4 being failure. And here are the grades. This is from top down. Uh, Top down, I believe it's Finnish, English, math. So you can say that the math is pretty low, but English is pretty high. Then there's generic life sciences, or what you would call study of religion from an atheist point of view. Then there's religion, pure tens. Then there's philosophy. No, that's philosophy, pure nines. And then there's history, I think. Yeah, history. Then there's societal sciences. Then there's physics, chemistry, biology, earth sciences, psychology, and art. So you can see that religion is pure tens, history is almost pure tens, life sciences is almost pure tens, and the grade average is something like 9. Though math was a 6, math was a 6 and Finnish was a 6. So this just goes to prove the age-old paradigm that you can be really good at humanistics, but if you suck at expressing in your native language and suck at math, which is the universal language, you're gonna have a hard time. So keep that in mind when you go to school. If you are an expert in math, you're gonna have a hard time, and if you can't express yourself in your native language, you're gonna have a really hard time. So yeah, I had a weird dream. I was aware in the dream that it was a dream because I've been having these weird types of dreams where, for example, I fly in that I walk down the street and then I lift my legs to a yoga posture and continue to move forward at like a normal height altitude. And I just don't in the dream realize that it's a dream. This is something I normally do. This is normal for me in the dream. And I've been setting up like mental checkpoints to notice if I am in a dream. And a few times when I was awake, I realized that I was in a parallel reality, aka a dream. Something happened around me that made me sure that it was a dream. And as far as parallel realities go, yeah, it was a dream. And then when I was fully asleep, like actually asleep, I hit one of those unconscious markers that I placed for myself. Like I realized, this is also a dream. And then I just turned to one of the guys who was in the group and was like, what's it like being a character in somebody else's dream? And he went completely apeshit. Well, not completely, but he was like, it was really funny and a little bit scary. Now, this night, I had a dream of Stellaris, voting age, and a war on Earth, which was a little bit menacing. And there was a timeline that's not possible in Stellaris for a start in Stellaris about Earth being invaded and us surviving it. And it was all very weird. And the dream ended when we got 1 6-year-old voting rights. And she was jubilant about it, and the dream ended there. Then I wake up and I go online and I see that literally the first message any of my contacts have sent me or any of my news articles are reading about is the 2-year-old with an IQ of 146. So same theme, young people being smart. And I was like, the dream has carried to reality. And it was amazing. So, Stellaris. Now, in the dream, it's weird talking when you can see that nobody's actually watching and there's no one here. There was one guy here, but he's no longer here. Now, in Stellaris, I have an idea for a starting scenario, and it would be a huge galaxy. We would manually create all the opponent civilizations. We would have all the different camps like stickers, cakers, human rights activists, LGBT, social justice warriors, and so on. Everybody would have their own civilization, and the AI would be placed on the aggressive setting. And I would just play one of those camps. I would randomly pick one that fits me. And we would have a battle royale. Who wins is the model that we all eventually will follow. That would be perhaps true quantum computing, if you will. And that is what the dream suggested. It very clearly suggested that this should be solved in Stellaris. And it's not unusual for dreams to have very strict, clear suggestions for me, but it is somewhat unusual for me. Most of my dreams just involve me running around in the nature, doing nature stuff, like literally frolicking in the forest naked. And that's what most of my dreams are. So when I get a dream that literally touches on my reality, voting rights, and literally says to me, play Stellaris to solve this issue, I'm like, the voices, they're nice. So yeah, that's about that for the weird dreams. And I have to say just one thing. You guys in Fallout collect bottle caps. I collect bottles. So I have a unique understanding of the post-nuclear apocalypse situation. And it is quite funny that my reality is your fantasy of 200 years from now. It is amazing. And when you wake up, your throat is parched. You take a sip of water, it helps a little. You smoke a few cigarettes and you feel like, and you have no money because you spend it all on drugs or food. And you just think to yourself, if I walk outside and collect bottles for perhaps 15 minutes, I can buy an energy drink. And you go out and you collect the bottles and you have enough for an energy drink and a little bit over because you don't want to be exact, because it's pretty hard to be exact when the numbers are a little fuzzy. Like sometimes they don't accept the specific bottles, so you have to have a little bit over the normal price, and sometimes these machines don't accept the bottles even though they should. So you get like 20 cents extra and an energy drink. And when you do the and take the first sip, oh dear God, the feeling of Fallout. Like, it's indescribable. It's absolutely indescribable. Being in the mood of, I collected this in the wasteland and I can finally enjoy it. It's my Nuka-Cola. It's amazing. It's literally amazing. The first sip, it's so good. So good. So I have tried to scan this 2-year-old with an IQ of 146 in the astral. Oh, my net's gonna go. My net's gonna go. Is it going? Is it going? The signal strength is down. And it's back up. Whew, that was close. I was almost worried that somebody kicked me in the nets when you discuss the children, which is a very common topic. You can literally see when people are upset with my topics because the net goes up. It's like dangling on a wire. So I was talking with the person in the astral, and it was an interesting discussion. It was literally an interesting discussion. Now these kids, the 2-year-olds with an IQ of 146, when a normal adult in the US has an IQ of 98. Finland is probably 99 to 97, I don't know. The smartest Asian countries are 103. So 97 or 96 is America. 103 is South Korea and Japan. And this kid is 146. So you get some estimate of how far into the future this one is. I talked with it. It was pretty amazing because the kid is smart as all hell. And we talked about voting rights for a little while. And we kind of sort of came to the same conclusion with the voting rights. It shouldn't be mixed with the sexuality rights thing, because people like this one, who has no interest in sexuality whatsoever, still wants to vote. So we will be seeing a population that is pre-sexuality with an interest in communicating through elections. And this to me seems like true Elven, like truly what Elven is. These kids who have an interest in becoming adults in sexuality, in becoming adults, because this one had no interest in literally becoming an adult, are understandable. They are in the group that we can picture ourselves in. We can understand being a child who wants to hump something and doesn't, get the right. We can understand as somebody like me who wanted to do 7 of 9 when I was like 10, how annoying it was that I wasn't allowed to send them fan mail and pictures of my dingus. But this one is, despite having the brain of, Albert Einstein, is in no way interested in becoming an adult in that sense, but is absolutely interested in having voting rights. So it is hard. So this is something that will require true adaptation. This is the next step in my voting rights reform, which we would like to discuss in the form of the emancipation. I doubt it. Which we would like to discuss in the emancipation idea, meaning that if you get, even without your parental consent, if you get a court to agree with you that you can be considered an adult, you get access to all the adult functions like social security, driver's license, etc., etc. So that is the next step, because we have kind of established, even though we would like to have some more paperwork and some more studies on this. Some more paperwork and studies on this is that when you don't get the right to vote, you don't care about what you're doing. When you are a slave, and I hate to use this word, but yes, a slave, when you are told to work in the houses and entertain the adults, make lots of pointless papers. You know why they're pointless? Because they don't store them after you're done. If we wanted to get kids to believe that school has a point, we would store every single paper, essay, school exam, article they have ever done in school. And when you graduate, you would get this pile of papers, and your employees would ask, give me like 5 of your best exams, and I will read through them and I will evaluate them. That would be caring about what the children do in school. School is a place where we put the kids so the adults can work. That is the simplicity of it. And they're objecting to it pretty strongly. They are going in the far extreme of sexuality to troll you guys. You do understand that. Most of them aren't really into sex. Really, they aren't into sex. But they like to troll you to get the rights. They like to make you feel as uncomfortable as they feel. So we have pretty much established that perhaps not for primary school, but at the very least, when you get to high school, you need to have the right to vote. That has been established, and in my discussions with the threat map, with the politicians, with the people, we have gotten a pretty clear, unanimous understanding that while it can't be done yet, voting rights need to be extended to people who are in some cases primary school, some cases high school, but way before 18, because we can't expect work without right to say what you are working on. This will be a slow transformation. It may not even happen in my lifetime, but eventually schools will have, like my school had, the students voting on who is the school's student representative to the panel of adults who decide what the school does. I was that representative. I got the second highest number of votes, and I got the position as the student electee to the panel who decides what the school does, what the funding is, and so on. I commented on some of the things like they were buying computers from a very expensive place because one of the staffers worked there and got a discount. And I said that even with the discount, you're being ripped off. They, of course, naturally didn't listen to me, but that is the reality. They didn't even make a comparative analysis on what different computers cost at different places. And they went for the computer shop that we all know was the most expensive in town because one of the staffers worked there. That's corruption. I saw it firsthand, and I know fully well that it fucks you people up. Now, this kind of system of electing school representatives to serve on the panels, not just in the position of youth panel or something like that, literally being in the adult section of the school organization, will slowly take more and more hold. It will slowly become more and more relevant. But that does not solve the issue of people who are not of school age, have an IQ of 148 or 46 in this case, and want to vote. For that, we need the emancipation justice system. US is doing this pretty well. Their system of emancipating minors is pretty good. It's worked relatively well. There are some minor adjustments that may need to be done, but the overall system is pretty good. But we need to adapt it to other countries as well. Yeah, we need better parents, but it's not as simple as saying only with a parental certificate can you become a parent. We need adults educated, and we can't start educating adults. We need to educate children to become better adults. The panels, school elections, eventually municipal and religious elections. For example, in Finland, I believe, though I could be wrong, that church elections allow 15-year-olds to vote, and the entire church hierarchy is elected every few years. So, stuff like that. But we need the emancipation system to be adapted in Europe. We need it to allow people who are way below the age of 18 to be emancipated as adults if they pass the court exam, if they pass a jury exam. And eventually, based on what I'm seeing, this will go through, but it will take a serious amount of time. And I'm not worried about time in this case. We have plenty of time, but what we don't have is time to not be doing the reforms. If the reforms are being undertaken, it just takes time. I'm okay with it. I don't want to rush this. We don't want a half-assed system. We need to do this well. But this debate is one where I believe the children will win. I believe The first case when I heard somebody other than me in a respectable sense talk about this was in the West Wing voting age episode. I was completely blown away that they literally talked about the president saying, even if it's just a TV show, the president saying, young people voting needs serious thought. We need to study this topic. And that was absolutely mind blowing for me. Now, the TikTok generation will be smarter than you because children evolve. The human race evolves. Every generation is smarter than the one that came before. And the reason you're feeling so uncomfortable with them is that they're feeling so uncomfortable with you. And they are intentionally trolling and egging you on. There is an aspect of real human exploration. They are, in a real sense, exploring themselves and the humanity around them. But for the vast majority of them, they're trolling. And that is not to say that they shouldn't be taken seriously. If anything, they should be taken more seriously because of it. Hmm. That's what they said about, computers and smartphones and all that stuff. They always say shortening of the attention span. But from what I see when I interact with these youngsters, the attention span is actually pretty good. They have a pretty good attention span. Now, adults don't. They microdate, for example. Yes, they were, but we're still more intelligent than they are. Now, I believe in time, all human issues will be solved and will ascend to literal godhood, even if we do try to kill ourselves off. Evolution has the nasty habit of reforming a being from nothing if it is useful to evolution, like the crab evolution. Even if we go full biological warfare on each other and just kill off the entire species, it'll take the planet a few million years and some monkey will develop back into humanity. So I don't believe that we have the power to destroy this evolutionary process, even if we try. The planet will fuck us up and we may be tortured by being held in the body of a crab for 10 million years, but eventually we will all return back to humanity. We may have a tail, we may have different ears, but we will still be humans again. I kind of agree with you, G, in that raw human intelligence hasn't increased much, but if you realize that in the past 300 years, everybody has learned to read, write, and do basic math, which was incredibly rare 300 years ago. You could write an X on the piece of paper for your name, but that was about it. It is hard to see when reality is kind of trolling you how smart the children are becoming. But by the time, if you're not like an asshat, by the time you're like 50 or 60, you'll see that your generation is hopelessly outmatched. What you see as being slower to learn because of old age has nothing to do with old age. You will remain as fast as you were as a kid, but you are not as fast as they were when they were kids, when they will be 30. And it takes you right now, perhaps a week, perhaps a month, to learn a new technology well. But the next generation will do it in 3 days, and the one after that in 3 hours, and so on. I would say, to the topic of the smart people not having children, I would say that their smartness seems to be that they do not believe governments. So the current smart people movement seems to be the anti-vaxxer movement. They have a good idea but they don't know how to carry it out yet. They are children. But their idea of not taking in extra substances to keep themselves healthy is something that the previous generation could learn from, because it just seems that they are becoming more adept at understanding that addictions are bad, for example, that it is bad to be addicted to the needle with the antibodies and the chicken eggs and stuff like this. Even though it's badly carried out, the idea of it seems to be good. They seem to be doing what our generation kind of taught them to do, which is don't believe in authority. We very clearly instructed the kids through our school experience that when somebody says that you have no rights and forces medical experiments upon you, think Nazi. We were very clear to educate the children to understand this, and now they understand this. And that now they see these groups that are forcing vaccines upon people, and they are thinking Nazi just as we intended. Now, this is perhaps unfortunate for our civilization, but it is not unfortunate for theirs. So, you know. And the idea that smart people aren't having children doesn't really influence the situation. The situation is that the people who don't have children, who are smart, will, through their influence, make sure that the people who are slightly smarter than the average will have more children because they like the more intelligent. They will help them out more. So while the guys with an IQ of 500 may not be having children, they will be making sure that the guys with an IQ of 105 will be having more children than the guys with an IQ of 103, because intelligence likes intelligence. So that's about the main part here. I think this reform is going well. We are getting roughly what we wanted the children to do, that they don't walk into the camps without a fight, that when the people who tell them that you have no rights to your own health and we will experiment on you with this vaccination or schizophrenia medication and so on, put up an actual fight instead of walking into the camps and being turned into goo. And this is very good. It is very good that they are putting up a fight. If you truly are better equipped than them to decide for them, then you should be able to handle their anger. You should be able to handle their combat mindset towards you. If you can't handle it, then you really don't know what they are going through and have no rights to interfere with them. So I'm thinking of doing that Stellaris gameplay, having different human ideologies relating to this question be the different countries, and I would play one of them, and then put the AI on the most aggressive setting and have the largest galaxy in the system and just go nuts, just see who wins. That was what the dream very clearly said that I should be doing. So that is what I think. So long story short, you can't expect a person to work for you without having the right to say what they are working on, without having voting rights. This was pretty clear in the 18th century and the 19th century, and it's pretty clear today. And don't even tell me that school is important, because if you truly believed that school is important, you would save all of the works that the children do. There would be massive storages and portfolios of the children's work. And when they graduate the school and become adults, those works would be handed to them, and the school would retain copies in case they are lost. And workers and employers would ask you about your school essays. That would be a sign that it's important. As long as shit like that doesn't happen, then don't even bother telling me that school is important. It's not. Nice, G. Uh, got a 20 buck loan from one of my friends because I was running out of money for food and cigarettes, and I believe this may be the last loan I take for a long period of time because I recently quit smoking weed. I feel so sick for a few days, but it's getting better. It was really quite obnoxiously bad. It was amazingly bad for a few days, but I got over it. So, there you have it. The reform is going well. There's no need to rush. And most of these people are trolling you, but they are trolling you from the heart. They believe that these rights should be theirs. So when they are squeezed off the normal interaction space for these rights, they become more extreme and become more compressed, is perhaps a word I'd use. Here is the legendary debate. That's pretty radical. Where issues are discussed. Let's discuss. Nee. I'll mention it to all the presidents. Would I be content if the voting age was lowered and the new voting population voted to increase the punishments? That's the hard one. But yes, I would be. It's your society as well as ours. If the vote goes through and we all, you included, decide to give harsher punishments, then we give harsher punishments. It's not a matter of if you only vote with me, because that would be quite bad. Strange hotel with my ex-wife. I still get dreams about my ex-wife occasionally. Thank you. Aye. Sometimes it is. Racism. Giggity. It's weird in the astral listening to the powers of Earth, the normal politicians and people be worried about this in the same way that they would be worried about an extinction level event and listening to them. It's weird.
It's called a victory.
Protein water. That's completely true. When you want everything, you usually end up with nothing. Huh. Didn't know Tom Holland is only 25. Bah. No, I am fucking serious. I cannot guarantee that this shit works. Cameroon is saying that they might be interested in doing this test. Israel is also saying that. Simplify the tax system. Make sure that there aren't many categories of taxes and they aren't complexly written so that anybody can understand how to file the taxes. I have an IQ of 140 according to this test, and I cannot file a corporate tax thing. So simplify them. Increase the value added tax because that's the one tax that kind of hits everyone equally. And by everyone, I mean tourists as well as nationals. Lower the corporate tax, and that's the main point, and give a tax benefit if you invest back in your company. That's a very key point. If it works, which I cannot guarantee you, but if it works, unemployment will lower, while social service costs will lower dramatically, while the population becomes a tiny bit richer or a tiny bit poorer, but unemployment will basically vanish. Once the unemployment is done, it's no longer an issue. You will have quite a bundle compared to what you had previously. And then you can think of perhaps paying back some debts, perhaps investing in your country. That's the main point that I'm thinking here. So, based on what I'm hearing here at the map, inflation is not on top of currency interest rate, which I thought it would be. So that if inflation is say 3% and your currency interest rate is say 5%, it appeared to my understanding, which seems wrong, that you would still lose 3% of the value of your investments every year to inflation. It is indeed the other way around, so that if inflation is 3% and currency interest rate is 5%, your investment or whatever have you in terms of money will increase by 2% every year. That seems to be what I'm seeing here. If so, I believe we have a reasonable chance of doing this Kazakhstani model well, because with our 15% currency interest rate and 6% inflation rate, we are slowing down the economy with the high currency interest rate quite substantially, because we were trying to have a deflationary cycle, meaning that the amount of money you have is always increasing, even if currency rates aren't increasing. We were trying to aim for that. We thought, or I thought, that it is counted so that inflation rate is the final number and currency value rate is just currency value rate, which is used to slow down inflation. But according to what I'm seeing on the map here, currency interest rate is counted kind of separately, so that you get a currency rate of 5, inflation rate of 3, means that if you have money on the bank at the start of the next year, you will have 2% more money on the bank. So with a 15% interest rate and a 6% inflation rate, you will get almost 10% more money in the bank for every year that you have your money in the bank. That is too much. So as that slows down the economy dramatically, and the main point that I had for disliking my model was that the growth rate of the economy was actually like 2%, when before the economic changes it was around 6%. meaning that it tanked the economy and as such was a failure. But if we actually lower the interest rate from what it is at 15% to be above, say, 2% above inflation rate, we will see the final numbers on how good this actually looks. Then we have some idea of what we're looking at. If this works, I will tell you that based on the data I'm seeing here, many of the international groups, such as the IMF, will literally, throw you out because you're being a state capitalist, which is generally frowned upon. But if it works, it gives some countries who are already on the out group a chance to save their economies without relying on massive Western loans. So I said that I have 2 years in office. If it doesn't work in 2 years, it doesn't work. And the idea is very simple. You increase the value added tax because that'll hit tourism. You will do improvements to the infrastructure of your country and the services for tourists because that will sideline the value added tax increase, which will hurt tourism. And through that, you will have some amount more of money available, which you will use to lower the corporate tax and give tax benefits to people who invest their corporate profits back into the corporation instead of taking them out of the corporation. And other taxes you might want to lower are things like social security payments for employers, meaning that the hidden costs of hiring a worker should be lower. Most people don't realize this, but on average, if you pay your worker $20 an hour, it costs you $40 an hour. So lowering those costs, as well as doing some other reforms which may or may not be relevant to your country, but in this model they were relevant. And the outcome should be that everyone is either a tiny bit richer or a tiny bit poorer. There should not be a major shift in the wealth of the economy, but unemployment should basically vanish. Once unemployment is gone, you will no longer, as a state, have to pay unemployment subsidies, which are a huge burden on the economy. Also, social security costs will go down dramatically, and that is the money we're aiming for. And not the money you make from lowering unemployment, but the money you make from lowering unemployment, basically, lowering the social security costs. And once those go down, you will have, depending on how dramatic your change was, some amount more money available to you. And that money should be invested into the economy to improve the services and qualities of things that people will notice are lower due to the higher value added tax. And that is the theoretical outline. In this model that we tried, it worked, but the high currency interest rate caused the economy to tank. And that is my failure specifically, because I assumed that inflation is the final number, not the currency value, So now that this map says very clearly, you guys say very clearly, that if you have an interest rate of 5%, and an inflation rate of 3%, everybody will be 2% richer every year, which means that we will have quite a massive bundle as we drop the interest rate from 15% to perhaps 7%, because it needs to be higher than inflation. If this works in the remaining 4 months I have in the simulator, then I feel that perhaps some amount of effort looking at this model would be recommended. While I use the money to do things like build highways and renewables and fast speed rails, you don't have to spend it on that. You can spend it, at whatever you want. But the main point is to lower corporate tax while increasing value added tax to make corporations more able to hire people, and then have the money, instead of going towards unemployment services, go towards employing everyone at least at low wages. And then one of the things I did was increase as the unemployment got well below 3%, which is supposed to be the optimum. I increased the low workers' wage while also decreasing the length of the work week. Decreasing the length of the work week increased unemployment because the people who work the hardest are usually the guys running the corporation in terms of hours. So forcing them to not do so causes some corporations to go under. So keep in mind, lowering the work week increases unemployment. And as long as your corporate tax is moderately high, even, you should be able to lower the unemployment and then lower the working week. We did all these standard reforms, and then we had a popular vote on all the things that could be liberalized, and the people decided. I had no desire to force the people to accept things like cannabis and gay marriages. But the people voted. Some of the things were completely in favor of passing, such as making media run by private sectors instead of the government and things of such nature. But your country may be different, your results may be different. So I will now go out for a moment and then play the remaining 4 months of the Kazakhstan model. If we can do similar numbers with no unemployment and an increase of 3 years of life expectancy in Kazakhstan for every year you live, because they are lagging in technology behind the super modern, super wealthy, super healthy countries, it should stabilize into something that we can take a look at. But if the cost of solving the unemployment issue is that the economy grows at 1% instead of 7%, it's not worth doing. I'm sorry. But if we can do numbers of growth that are similar to the normal model, and we just basically lose unemployment subsidies and the unemployment issue is solved, then I think it's worth it. Because one of the things we saw in this model was that, for example, the crime rate dropped from 20 a year out of 100 to around 7 a year out of 100, because people were no longer hopeless and robbing each other for the pennies and such. So I'm hoping that we get good economic growth numbers. If we don't, I'll shelve this thing because then my model doesn't work and I'll go back to the drawing board. But if we get relatively good growth numbers, I will make some probings into the direction of if this is workable for the actual nations of the world or if this is a simulation. We will see something happening in the world community relating to this. So once again, simple outline: lower the corporate tax, lower the hidden costs of hiring, and increase the value-added tax. This should, according to this model, solve unemployment. It should also have some secondary effects, such as lowering the crime rate, heightening or increasing the life expectancy. But it might, far as I know, slow down the economic growth. What we need to figure out with this model is how expensive is this? And that's the first time I've ever seen Greenland talk. And that's about the size of it. So we will see the results today. I will do a second podcast about this, and it will be the last one in the series of Kazakhstan. And if it works, we may have a tentative solution to the worst problem of this era, the unemployment and the hopelessness related with that. And if it doesn't work, it's very sad. I will go back to the drawing board and I may come up with some other option later on. But I truly hope we can get 5%. It was 7% before these reforms. If we get a very high number, I may be a little bit surprised and alarmed at it, but that might be possible. So that is all, and I will be informing you of the results. So, to you guys watching the podcast, as I was previously talking to the politicians on the radar, which, by the way, was interesting. Greenland said that this is, something that they keep an eye on, this Kazakhstan development thing. And it is the first time I have ever seen Greenland talk. I have seen countries like Tuvalu and Samoa and such sometimes chime in support for me, but this is the first time I have seen Greenland talk, literally the first time. And they said that if this works, if we get a good economic growth rate, it's interesting, something even they are considering. So to you guys watching the podcast, I will be back in about an hour, and I will be playing the last 3 months or 4 months of my Kazakhstan game, and you will see kind of what I would do if I was the leader. I would discuss things considerably more than in my model, and I would not be quite a dictator about the methods that this game uses for government meetings and such are such shite that I really don't want to bother myself. You meet them, you click offer drink, offer coffee, and then you quit the meeting, and then you go to the next one. If you don't do that, the game says you're a dictator, but you don't even ask them of their opinion and you don't negotiate with them or anything. You just click meeting, drink, coffee, end meeting. And that's all you need to do. And in this game, it's cumbersome, very cumbersome. In reality, having a meeting is quite easy. It's quite non-bothersome. You sit down, you eat for half an hour, 15 minutes, you perhaps have a cup of coffee. You end up discussing all the points amongst the cups of coffee, and then you go forward. So, Kazakhstan model, I hope you all tune in, and we will see the end result of what this thing is telling us. I believe this is the one we're looking for. No, this is the one we're looking for. So we are at the part 7. So tune into the Kazakhstan model. Here it is. And I will be back for the next one. Bye.